man, so we're back. Here we go. What are we talking about here?
The imposter syndrome.
Yeah, what's that mean to you, man? What's imposter syndrome?
Is it where somebody thinks they're like an outcast?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So, like, if, let's say somebody works for a company, right? And they are secretly working for another company. We would call that a what?
Imposter.
That's an imposter, yeah, for sure. So, imposter syndrome is kind of crazy. It means that imagine what the feelings would be like for the person that worked at that company that didn't actually have the best interest of that company in mind. Like, do you think they might feel like they're going to get found out all the time?
Yeah.
Right? So imposter syndrome just means that. It means that people are like walking around and they feel like at any given moment people are going to find out who I really am, right? And once they find out what you're really like, what do you think that means? Like, what do you mean? Well, actually, in fact, what do you think I mean when I say find out what we're really like? What's their fear there?
Like they're somebody different than what they show everybody.
Okay, for sure. So there might be different than what either they show everybody, or here's what's crazy, different than what they think people see in them, right? Mm-hmm. So like, let's say I, just got a raise at a job, right? And so the presumption is that means I'm pretty good at the job. Imposter syndrome means like I'm worried that all these people are going to find out that I'm not really even that great, and they'll all see me for who I am, and the true me sucks, and people aren't going to love me, and it's not going to be like a favorable outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see this at all in the world? Where do you see this?
Sometimes I think I see it in like my friends. They'll say like they're trying to make everybody happy.
What do you think people's biggest fear is?
Isn't it public speaking?
Okay. That's a great one, actually. So why do you think that is? Taking a look at this imposter syndrome, why do you think it is that people have such a fear of public speaking?
Is it because they think they're going to mess up?
Okay.
And then they'll see them?
That's it. Everybody, I'll be exposed, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you really take that in context, you go like, okay, why is that so scary? The reason it's so scary is because that person is being spotlighted and magnified in front of a bunch of people. And so now the perception is if I have one little Freudian slip, if I have one little, squeak of the voice, I say one fact slightly incorrect, or I mischaracterize something, that then everybody's just going to think that I what?
Or like bad. And
yeah.
Good at it.
That's it. You just suck. That guy sucks, right? The reality is like some of the best speakers in the world have made plenty of blunders while they're speaking, right? I've spoken plenty of times and I articulate just fine, and yet I still make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So what's really going on there? Like, if people are still going to accept you, even if you make a mistake public speaking, where's the lie? What's the why behind it?
Do you mean like why they don't like doing that, or why they think that's the problem?
Right, so kind of on this imposter syndrome period, everybody's going to find out that I'm really actually like less than I am. Is that true?
No.
Are you less? Right? No. So do you think people know what some of their maybe less popular thoughts are?
Yeah.
Right? So what do you think that means? What's that look like?
Like what they're not the best at?
Okay, so they already know what they're not the best at, right? And so there's a fear like other people won't know. Do you think other people know what you're not exceptional at?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do they figure that out?
They just watch you.
They're around you for a little bit of time. Yeah. Do you think it's possible that everybody is fantastic at everything?
No.
No. So what are some things that you feel like you're comfortably good at?
Like I'm good at like doing surfboarding.
Yeah, good at
like
surfing.
Jiu-jitsu.
How are you at math?
Pretty good.
Why would you say pretty good?
I'm not the best at it.
Compared to?
Like getting like 100%. Maybe like closer to maybe 80 or 90.
Okay, cool. And like what kind of math?
Like pre-algebra.
Okay, and so you're 14, right? Going into 9th grade right here shortly. When you say I'm not the best, who is that compared to?
I don't know.
Let's say that were a job.
Yeah.
Okay. Like or a business. You own a business, right? Okay. And you go and you do the job and it comes back and you get like an 80% on it, right? So you're agreed. That's not perfect. What do you do from there?
Could like study more on that.
Okay, so study a little bit more. So let's say on the math, you take the test or you do the quiz, you get an 80. Do you go look at what you made an error in? Do you just press forward? What do you personally do?
Like the answer, I'll go back and look at it. Sometimes I just might, like, I'll realize it after I made it. I'm like, oh, I should have done that.
Right.
But normally, if I don't know exactly what it is, I'll go back and look at it and see what I messed up.
Do you find that there's ever a time when you just go, fuck it, I'm done?
Maybe like at the end of the day.
At the end of the day,
move on.
Extra wiped out. So if you were to put it like on an out of a 10, right? So 10 different times you get less on the grade than you would like to. Out of those 10 times, how many times do you think that you just disregard where you made errors compared to where you go back and look?
Maybe 8.
8 times you disregard it?
Oh, no. No, maybe 2.
2 times, right? So one of the things the world doesn't know about Slade either is Slade is integrity level is very high. So what's running through your head is what?
Like the actual number.
Trying to make sure that you're not what?
Like maybe telling the wrong thing.
Right, saying the wrong thing, right? So these are just an arbitrary test. It doesn't mean like there's a right or a wrong specifically on how many times that is. I can see it because I know you as your father. You're like going, okay, I could just be like one time, but in the abundance of caution, I don't want to be incorrect in my assessments. Let's round up, let's round down.
Yeah.
But the summation of thought is, okay, so let's say you got an 80%.
Yeah.
And then 80% of the time, when you get an 80%, you're going back to check.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that means when you do 10 different tests, right, on that 80%, when you go back and check, on 8 of the 10 tests, you're ensuring that that you understood where your mistake was, and then you can figure out, moving forward, what to do differently.
Yeah.
2 out of the 10 of those, right? You still got an 80% and you didn't fully figure out why. Okay, so now let's drag this out from a math standpoint. That means if there's 100 possible points on the 10, right?
Yeah.
That means that on the ones that you got 80 out of 100, you went back to double check. Now you can't make that 80 turn into 100, but if we think about this from a business or life perspective, and you understand why you made the error. Now, they're not going to give you this grade in a math class, but in the real world, that 80 almost turns into 100.
Yeah.
Because moving forward,
you understand your mistake.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's say instead of it being an 80, right, that it's a 95. Right? Because you understood your mistake, but you can't get that last 5 points. Okay. You did that 8 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
Which means instead of 8 80s, you had 8 95s.
Yeah.
Okay? Like from a business perspective. That means what's 8 times 5? That's 40. So out of a possible of 800 points, you only ended up missing 40 of those points out of 800.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And now the 2 that you didn't, there's another 40 points. Does that make sense? So out of a total of 1,000 points, because you got 10 tests, 100 per test.
Okay.
Make sense? You got 900, right?
Yeah.
And how much more, right? Because you got 40 off from one, 40 off from the other, so you have 900 and...
920.
Bingo. Okay, so a 920, understanding where your mistakes are, kind of as you continue to move forward, that's not an 80, that's a 92.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you have to, like, even with something like math, and this is what people got to think from an imposter syndrome standpoint, is like they see the 80s that they get even when they're trying to give it full effort, right? But it's only an 80 if you leave it. If you go, I made a mistake, that's going to fucking happen. Then you go back and say, okay, what can I do to make this better? What can I do taking this forward? And the reality is in life, son, sometimes you get an 80 on something, right? Like we'll do something for one of the gyms or Savage or whatever it is. I get an 80, and because I got an 80, I study so well what I missed my next one's not like the equivalent of 100. It's like 110 and 120.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Is it because you studied for that one and then you went on to the next? And
This is like theoretic math. It's
Yeah.
not actual math anymore. It's to make it make more sense. I go and I do a job that could make me $100.
Yeah.
Right? I do the best that I'm capable of and I only make $80.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Because I made mistakes on this job, when I get to the next job that we could say would only pay $100 as well,
Yeah.
because of my mistakes that I studied up so hard where I made mistakes, on this job, I only get 100 for it, but I do such a bang up job, it's like 120
Yeah.
worth. Then my growth on the next job is more like 120. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so like that's the thing, is like you don't have to be afraid of mistakes because mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
Where imposter syndrome comes in is when you start to believe that all those mistakes are the definition of who you are. It's not true.
Yeah.
Right? So what is quitting to you? Right? Like tell me something about Bowens real quick.
Never quit.
Never quit, right? So what does that mean? What does quitting mean to you?
It's more like maybe it's like you can do something and you just give up on it.
Okay, there you go. So like let's say I go to a tournament and I get beat. That's kind of like getting an 80, right? I give it
Yeah.
all I got, but I still lose, right? Or that's more like a 50, I guess. But either way, it's irrelevant. I give it all I got and I get beat, okay?
Yeah.
So I got beat. Did that mean I quit?
No.
Okay, well then what would quitting be moving forward?
Like not learning your mistakes and just going back. And
So what would be even less active than that?
is it you lost that and you just quit it?
And you just give up?
Yeah.
That's it. You just give up, right? So quitting doesn't mean that you had failures. Quitting doesn't mean that you come up short. Quitting means that you cease to challenge for that 20%. You cease to challenge yourself and cease to want to grow in those areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, because I am honest with you about it always, but I have plenty of failures.
Yeah.
Right? And so what do?
You learn from those mistakes and move on.
100%, right? So why is it that people, even though you can make mistakes, still feel like they are inadequate, knowing that everybody make mistakes, right? Why
Yeah.
do they feel inadequate?
Is it because they might think other people don't make mistakes?
That's a fantastic reason. They think other people don't make mistakes, and even further, they don't realize that while they might be making a mistake on this thing is not the definition of who they are. You understand?
Yeah.
So who you are is who God created you to be. And so now we go to what? Genesis 1. What version are we going?
In NSA.
NA.
Oh, NASB 1995.
Yeah. Do you remember what that stands for?
It's New American Standard Bible.
Man, that boy good, right? Hey, by the way, did you make a mistake just now?
Yeah.
What do you do?
I looked back and I looked at what I'm missing the word there.
That's
I
all right,
looked
go
back
ahead.
at what my mistake was, and then I adjusted it.
Bingo. And then you made a mistake talking about your mistake. How was that?
And I had to do the same thing.
You see, this is such as life, son. Such as life, right? So everybody that's watching, mistakes are life, right? In fact, if we didn't make mistakes, we wouldn't be able to cultivate a character for ourselves. And in fact, it seems to be that is one of the central reasons that we're on this earth in the first place, right? Is to cultivate character. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to Genesis 1.
Nah, I go way back. Life's a so this is payback. And no giving, I can say that. All the time, I pray for that. You better save that. Better save that. I bottle lightning, bag thunder.